Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, consciousness, and what it all means. Frans Stiene has been a major influence on global research into the system of Reiki since the early 2000s. His practical understanding of the Japanese influence on the system have allowed students around the world to connect deeply with this practice. Frans is a co-founder of the International House of Reiki and Shibumi International Reiki Association. He co-authored with Brown Logan the critically acclaimed book, The Reiki Source Book, The Japanese Art of Reiki, A to Z Reiki Pocketbook, and Your Reiki Treatment. His own books are The Inner Heart of Reiki, Rediscovering Your True Self, Reiki Insights, and his new book, The Way of Reiki, The Inner Teachings of Mikao Usui, just came out. Frans has been studying since 2012 with Takeda, I'm going to try, Hakusui Ajari, a Japanese priest. Did I get that even close?
You did. You're doing good.
Okay. Welcome, Frans.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Really excited.
So I've had someone a while ago on to talk about Reiki. So if we could start kind of with what exactly is Reiki, because I usually think about it as just energy healing, but it's clearly not that simple based on this book.
Yeah. These days, when people talk about Reiki, they think energy healing or hands-on healing. But traditionally, the word Reiki was pointing to your own true nature, your essence, your inner great bright light. And there were very specific practices within the system of Reiki to help you really lay bare that own inner luminosity.
So how did we get away from that? What was the movement away from turning inward to someone else helping us to do that healing?
I think if we look at a lot of these teachings coming from the East, even yoga today, if you type in yoga on Instagram, it looks more like acrobatics. And even within yoga, often these days, you hardly hear about self-awakening. It's more about doing postures. I think it's a unfortunate tendency in many of these traditions that we've moved so outwards. Unfortunate.
Yeah, it seems like sadly, when the West gets their hands on things, oftentimes they distort the true meaning, the true essence of the practice or the teachings.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely also now there's a big movement also within the system of Reiki and yoga to really turn it back around again. And because even today I was reading in the newspaper that there's so many people here in Holland, for example, with depression, burnout. So I think a lot of people are starting to look inwards again.
So, who was Mikao Usui, and what was the style of Reiki that was practiced? I mean, was this sort of the originator of Reiki?
Yeah, he was the founder of the system of Reiki, and he was a lay Buddhist monk. And what was very common at that time within Japan around late 1800s, beginning of 1900s, when the system of Reiki was created, there were many people trying to make Japanese esoteric teachings more available for like a shopkeeper, a farmer, someone who was not a monk or a nun, and yet wanted to really lay bare their own inner happiness and joy.
And how did he do that? Like, can you take us through? I know you talk about a lot of this in the book, but this concept of kanji.
So, in a way, how Mikasui did this in Japan at that time, for example, Mikasui was going into the mountains. He did a very specific 21-day practice there. And it's not something like we think, oh, 21 days is not that much, but these practices still exist. They're very, very difficult. You practice about 20 to 21 hours a day, chanting, meditation in a cave. You only sleep like 3 hours a night. And you do that often with eating hardly anything or drinking hardly anything. It's like the intake is brought back to minimum. So before we can actually do those 3 days practice, you have to have done a lot of training before that. So by actually looking that he was already sitting on his mountaintop for 21 days, we know that for years he's been already practicing and studying and having that direct experience as much as they could of that true nature, that inner luminosity within themselves.
So it sounds a bit like a sensory deprivation experience.
Actually, yes and no. In Japan, actually, what they say, you leave all your senses wide open, but you are trying to stay in that wide open space without getting caught up what you see, taste, feel, and sense.
Mm.
There's a wonderful quote by a Zen master I love using, and it's you leave your front door open and you leave the back door open. The thoughts come in the middle, don't serve them tea.
You just let them go.
You just let them go. But
Good.
easier said than done, right?
Right. Right. So when he did this, what did he find happened?
He found that he found a very almost like that luminosity within himself.
Mhm.
And this happened traditionally when we let go of the ego, or in other words, when we can actually not find the I anymore. So really that unification, having a very direct unification with all that is, or with the universe, not
Mm.
just in our mind, but actually like the yogis or yoginis, that they have these really direct experience. And when that happens, actually, a lot of energy starts to emanate from you. And then you can actually start to help people with that energy, either hands-on healing or just sitting with them. And that started to trigger more like hands-on healing in a way.
So, okay, so it sounds to me like the practice that he went through was to get in touch with his own luminosity, his own light. And
Absolutely.
then once he was in touch with his own light, he could then use his light, his energy to help move others' light and energy.
Yeah. In a way, it's a little bit like people these days, like, for example, Thich Nhat Hanh or Dalai Lama, when they do these really extensive practices. And I'm not sure if you ever met the Dalai Lama, but when you meet like people like the Dalai Lama, the light and the energy and the peacefulness is just amazing, just
Mm.
emanating from them.
It sounds a little bit like, I don't know if you've read any of Ram Dass's work,
Yeah. Yeah.
but his guru in India that he first met, and I forget the name. It sounded like there was a similar experience there, like just sitting in the presence of,
Yeah.
in and of itself, made you feel enlightened or connected or, to yourself, to source, whatever it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think traditionally we can see very common thread through the yogis in India or China or Japan or shamanistic practices, where these yogis or yoginis or these teachers really went through their own purification process, and then to help other people, and then taught specific methods and structures to actually for people so that they could find their own inner luminosity again.
Mm. So how does that work then with someone practicing? It sounds like, and I believe that this should be kind of in a lot of work when you're working with other people and you're in their energy space. And I want to talk a little bit about energy in a minute, that you should have done your own work on yourself in some capacity.
Oh, I agree 500%.
And I do worry that a lot of people step into the healing space before, and I'm not saying you have to be completely healed because I don't
No.
believe that's ever possible, but I do believe you have to be engaging in your own work around healing. And I wonder how that could impact those who are in the space but haven't really looked inside themselves.
Yeah, I mean, for example, when I first started the system of Reiki, then it was very much like, oh, you just go out and do hands-on healing. And I lived in India at that time and met all these local healers and the quality of their energy was way beyond what I could do. And you would be in their presence, and there was a depth, an insight, a clarity. The movement of energy was beyond words. And I thought, wow, how do they do it? And so when I talked to these teachers, practitioners, healers, they all talked about their own very dedicated meditation practice. And I go, wow, why isn't that in the system of Reiki? And then when I went to Japan, I rediscovered that it actually traditionally was within the system of Reiki, but a lot of teachers left it out. And, now, for example, some teachers, even in Japan, they say, oh, just surrender. But we all know just surrender is not so easy, right? We can say that, just surrender, but if my mind is still being distracted by all sorts of shit, then it's very difficult to surrender. So we need methods to really help us to actually realize this really inner luminosity as much as we can at that moment in time.
So is meditation really the way to it? Are there other ways of getting in touch through this perspective? Are there other ways of getting in touch with that inner luminosity?
Yeah, I mean, for example, there are in the system of Reiki traditionally very specific chanting. There's also hands-on healing, but even chanting and hands-on healing, we should see it from a meditation space these days. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but a lot of people, they go to bed, they put their hands on themselves. I'm going to do hands-on healing. 2 minutes later, they fall asleep. And then the next day they said, oh, I did some really good hands-on healing on myself. No, you were asleep. We have to also be brutally honest with ourselves.
Right.
It's the same like, oh, I'm meditating and 2 minutes later I fall asleep. And then you say, that was a great meditation. No, you were actually sleeping and
Hmm.
sleeping, not meditating. It's something very different.
Right. And that doesn't mean you don't need to sleep. Like sometimes when you go into a meditation, what your body needs is really that
Yeah,
a different
absolutely.
type of rest.
Yeah, a different type of rest. But we should not mistake sleeping for meditation. It's something quite different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So kanji is that finding your inner luminosity.
The word kanji is actually a word for Japanese writing. The more we look at these old writings, what was really interesting, for example, that the old writing of Japan came from China, and if we just have the letter A, but for there they have a very specific kanji, and it has like 20, 30, 40 different meanings. And for example, in the kanji of Reiki, the word Reiki, we see, for example, many hidden teachings like let it rain. There is like 3 little bowls within it, so that you have to nurture your body, your energy, and your mind. So all of these are kind of hidden teachings within a lot of the Japanese writing and structure of it as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of little symbols in this book it was really fascinating to see how things were sort of paired together too. Like you talk about, I loved this quote, right? The kanji of ki, we can see rice and steam. So
Yeah.
there's two symbols together. Rice is nutrition, it nourishes us and nurtures us. But we also see steam. How do we get steam from rice? We have to cook rice because raw rice is not nutritious and of course difficult to digest. We need fire. And so it just talks about how it really illuminates, we're using that word a lot today, how all of these pieces are so interconnected.
Yeah, for example, ki, or what we call an energy, or prana, or chi, traditionally that was symbolized by rice, and that rice was very nutritious. Like in Holland, we eat potatoes, but in the
Here we do
in
too, with the side
yeah,
of meat, I think. Or
potatoes and
yeah.
meat. But in Japan, traditionally, it was rice. And yeah, rice we cannot raw, so we have to cook it, and we have to put the fire underneath the pot. And normally, this is also very symbolic from our inner energy, right? Our inner ki, our inner prana or chi. Normally, our fire is very high up in the body. So, for example, then I get angry, my face get red, or where I'm worried, my face also, my head get really hot. And that means the fire is above the rice, above the bowl. And therefore, when I do deep breathing into my center, just below my belly button, for example, then I'm bringing that fire more underneath the bowl. And the bowl is really that belly, the inner structure of the inner organs, what normally is almost like very frozen, right? If we made up are more than 70% of water, and when we have a lot of anger and worry, we become very frozen. We know it already. We can feel it physically in our body. We feel very stuck and very so when we use that fire, that inner fire, through certain practices, we heat up that kind of frozen water, so to speak, that ice cubey kind of feeling, so that we can flow more through life instead of hitting like this always ice cube against ice cube. And when we flow more through life, we feel much more lighter, we feel happier, everything flows more. We
The
use these
energy
words,
moves,
the
right? The
energy
energy
moves.
moves.
So yeah.
Got it. Okay. So there's a quote in the book: the big scale of life precept is the activity of the whole universe, which naturally ripens a tree's life, a person's life, and the life of all sentient beings. This is the most important meaning of precepts. You talk a lot about precepts in the book.
Yeah.
What does this look like in Reiki and in life?
So the precepts in the system of Reiki is do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be true to your way and your being, and be compassionate to yourself and others. And ultimately, that is really the quality of your inner bright light. Within your inner luminosity, your true nature, there is no anger, there is no worry. All that is, like, for example, I saw you drink some liquid. Water is wet, right? We cannot take wetness out of water. So the quality of water is wet. The quality of your inner luminosity, your bright light, is being grateful, is being true to your way and your being, and is being compassionate. So the more we let go of this anger and worry in our life, automatically this love and kindness comes forward. And it's a love and kindness what doesn't change according to circumstances. You know, normally, say we have a relationship, and I'm being really kind to you, and suddenly you say something, and then suddenly for months I'm not being kind to you because it changes according to circumstances. But when we really tap into that inner luminosity, then that compassion doesn't change according to circumstances. It's and that traditionally in all these teachings, really, if you look at Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism, they'll talk about the same thing: love and kindness.
I could really, really use your help. If you haven't had a chance yet to listen to my season 5 opener, go back and listen to that. I need your support. You can go to Patreon and put in Dr. Amy Robbins, and there you can find different levels in which you can support the podcast financially. At this point, I have no ads, I have no sponsors, and it would really, really help me out if you've gotten something out of this podcast, if you could donate $5, $10, or even $20 a month to help support the podcast. I'm continuing to work to try to get sponsors, to try to get advertisers, but until that happens, I need your help. And there are other ways to support the podcast. You can like the podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can rate and review the podcast. I always love reading your reviews. They're really heartwarming to me, and it's the emotional currency that I get from providing you with this resource. So please, please take a moment. Help me out here. You can also find the links in the episode notes as well as on my website at dramyrobbins.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Amy Robbins. This whole conversation, I think really speaks to even my kind of preconceived notions about what Reiki is, because my exposure to it has been minimal. But when I have had Reiki done on me before, and I've always left being like, yeah, I don't know what that was. Like, I didn't feel anything happen. Someone put their hands over me. They said they moved energy. I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. I have no clue. And so I've been actually, frankly, a little bit skeptical about it. What does this do? What is healing about this?
Well, I mean, I think this is the tricky part, and I think I need to come back to what you say already. These days, a lot of people, they do a course, they go out and do some healing.
Right. They're
And
like, I got my level 2 Reiki certification.
yeah, and yet their own inequality is not light enough at that moment in time to actually do proper healing, or helping someone. So for example, the other day, I got this guy in for a treatment, and he travels for his work around the world, Asia, America, and he says, oh, he had lots of Reiki treatment. So after my treatment, he goes, I don't know what just happened, but I've never felt anything like this in a Reiki treatment. He said it was so profound, so deep. He said I could feel everything moving in my body. He said it's the first time. He said I like Reiki, but I like it even more now. He said it's
Mm.
amazing. So, and I hate saying this, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it gives me a really good viewpoint that sometimes when we step in going to do a Reiki course to do some healing on other people, actually the motivation is all not in the right way. We actually need first to practice the system of Reiki for ourselves to lay bare our
Mhm.
luminosity. And then the side effect of that is that we can help other people. And it's very obvious. I am on some forums here and there, and then you see people, they say, oh, I've done Reiki too. I'm now a practitioner, but it's not working, or I feel really overwhelmed, or I'm taking on people's energy. It feels really bad, blah blah blah. And then I think, well, why are you starting? Why not first work on yourself? And then if I say, are you doing the meditation practices? Are you doing the chanting? Do you contemplate the precepts? And I go, what? No, I've never heard of it.
Wow. This episode is going to be so helpful, I think, for my listeners who are contemplating this or thinking, I think so many people right now are looking for different ways to heal. And
Yeah.
I think energy healing has really kind of en vogue right now to say you're doing some energy healing or you have your energy healer, you're going to an energy healer. You say this in the book. Reiki is not just being an energy practice, but that energy follows the mind.
Yeah.
And this is where I actually, not to toot my therapy horn, but this is where I think in so many ways pieces fit together, right? Like if you're doing a Reiki practice with yourself or someone else, then you can also move energy by what your mind is doing, by what you're feeding it, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
and those two would work beautifully together. I don't know how you do one without the other. Is that sort of what the intention was around talking about it in that way?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like for example, say I'm doing hands-on healing on someone and I'm thinking about yesterday, or I'm thinking about what am I going to eat tonight, then my mind is distracted. Automatically, my energy is also distracted. I mean, it's very obvious that our mind affects our energy. Our mind affects the body. If I'm angry in my mind, we can see it already constrict my energy. The way I walk is already different, so it's very obvious. But unfortunately, in a lot of healing practices these days, it's not taught about. It's just, oh, you just kind of surrender and you do hands on healing. And then the people watch television or they keep chatting to each other or
Right, they're
they
checking their text messages.
that's it. And the mind is really confused and all over the place. Then that energy is also all over the place. So the first point of call is really how can we control our own mind, And the more we control our own mind, then the quality of energy is very, 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 very different.
And then what does your practice look like? So you bring someone in and I mean, my experience has been I've done distance and hands-on,
Yeah.
and it just feels like someone moves their hands. Again, this is my very probably unprofessional experience, but
No, no,
I'm not
it's
saying the
very
people
nice.
who did it were unprofessional at
Yeah.
all, but I'm just saying like in my experience, that's all it felt like someone was just moving
Yeah.
their hands around for me.
Yeah. So there's actually a couple of different things, and that is the person who is performing the hands-on healing needs to be mentally and energetically in the right state. And so for me, for example, if you come in, the first thing I actually ask you is when you lay down, I say, okay, you set the intent that you want to heal yourself. And so that
Mm.
already triggers for you an opening. Like if I want to pour something in a glass, the glass needs to be empty. If it's full, then I cannot pour anything in it. So as much as possible to receive healing, I need to empty myself out of worry or fear or all sorts of expectations, for example. And so
So you
if
have to notice that you feel that before you can empty yourself out of it, right?
absolutely. That this is, yeah. If we don't notice it, sometimes I always say sometimes we're so distracted that we even don't know that we're distracted. So first we have to notice it. And then the practitioner, as much as possible, is not just your hands. And this is, for me, is really the hands are almost like a byproduct. Is really your state of mind. So if I would do a treatment on you, then my state of mind will, as much as possible as I can at that moment, really feel this very, very deep interconnectedness with you. And it might even feel there is no you, there is no me, there is just
Mhm.
a wide open state where, therefore, the energy is just so bright and luminous. But if we don't know, if I feel, I'm afraid to feel that interconnectedness because my client has cancer, and we put a protection over ourselves, then it's like a wall between me and my client, then there is already a distance. And therefore, healing has not its full potential.
It sounds like there's like a merger of energy in a way, and that this is why your energy is so important, is because if you're going to be merging with theirs and helping to use your energy to heal, yours has to be luminous.
Indeed. So, for example, some years ago, I was in America and I was doing some brainwave study. So, I had a client hooked up on a computer. I was hooked up on a computer, and I was doing hands on healing and to see what was kind of happened. And I did this 1 year, and then 2 years later, I did it again. And there was a couple of very interesting facts. When for myself, I really went what often people call that yoga nidra state of mind, that really open, wide, spacious state of mind. The brain waves of the other person laying down started to really match mine. It became really like in unison.
Mm.
And then, so 2 years later, I did it again. And because in those 2 years I'd been practicing, and the woman who was doing this research, she said, wow, you have changed. Your energy is way off the charts now. And it's so much more profound. And so there needs to be a progression, but that can only happen when we do the meditation practices, a lot of healing on ourselves. It's a little bit like if I want to run a marathon, I cannot just do a weekend class and then run a marathon. I need to train for it, right?
I tried that once. I tried a 10K without practice. It wasn't a smart move.
No, I bet. So, I mean, this is the same kind of thing. Or I can't make a Michelin star meal if I don't even know how to cook.
Right.
So,
You can't boil water.
absolutely. So there needs to be a progression in our practice. In the more we practice for ourselves, then the healing needs to deepen for yourself and for other people. And if that is not the case, then we have to question our own personal practice.
So when you go into someone's energy field, what do you see, or do you feel, or how do you experience that? And then what do you do with it?
Really, the best way to do it, and this is where we see again in a lot of the traditions, healing traditions, no matter if we look at yoga or Western alchemy or Buddhism or Christianity, we often see a symbol of the sun or the moon, and the sun just shines, the moon just shines as well. So often we, as confused human beings, we like to do things. We like to stimulate the energy and move it, but then we're so busy in our mind that our energy is also really distracted. So the best way is actually to go into this really deep very deep state of mind where it feels like you're just like the sun and you just let it shine. And then the
Mm,
person who is laying down takes from that whatever they need. I always say, I don't even know what I need. If I really honestly think, I just thought I needed a chocolate, but now I think back, maybe not.
hmm.
So if I don't know what I need, how the hell do I know what other people need? Right? So therefore, the best way is to really just let it shine, just let it rain, this beautiful energy of love and compassion, of luminosity. And ultimately, it's that non-dual light, right? That the sun doesn't judge and say, oh, you've been bad, you get one ray, and you've been good, you get 20 rays. So but that is really difficult because normally the ego gets involved and say, oh, but I can see this and I need to take that out, or I need to put this in, or I feel this and this means that, and I can open your chakra, or I can do this. It's all I based. It's all ego based. And then the more it's ego based, the more actually that energy is really being confined like an ice cube.
Wow. First of all, I'm kind of jealous that you have a job where you get to live in that meditative state all the time.
I was just walking today with a friend, and she said, Frans, you really have a great job. And I said, well, I wouldn't even call it a job. I said, I just, yeah, I've been doing this now for 25 years and I'm very lucky. Yes.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when I come out of a meditation that's been like a very deep meditation where I feel like I'm not in my body, and then I come back into my body, I'm always like, oh, can't I stay there? That felt a lot better to me. So I appreciate that, like, and you feel like so expansive and big and like
Yeah.
not confined. And so you said we need to know the destination of our true selves. So how does Reiki help people find that destination? I come to you, I lay on the table, or you do a distance healing
Mm,
with me, which I'm assuming is the same thing. You just go in, you
yeah.
shine your light, your energy, you direct it where it needs to go, maybe. Um, but how does Reiki then, how does that translate to helping people know their true selves?
If you lay down, and for most of us, we have kind of mislaid our true self, right? Our happiness, our joy, our playfulness, we've mislaid it somewhere. Sometimes we even say that light is not even there anymore. Of course it's
Mm.
there. Now imagine that I've put it somewhere. Imagine this is my apartment and I've put it somewhere in the cupboard over there. And you come as a practitioner and your light is only like a candle. Then that light of the candle doesn't reach the cupboard. So it was very difficult then to find my light again. But if you come in with a big floodlight, then that light might actually reach the cupboard and I go, oh, there
Mm.
is my light. And if I have that maybe once, this direct experience, like this weekend, I was teaching a Reiki 1 course, and this one guy said, oh, I just felt I was coming home in my own self again. It felt so, just what you said, it felt so wide and expanded. It felt so free. And when we have a taste of that, then we have the address. Then we go, oh, this is where I want to go to. And if I want to go and visit you, the first thing I need to do is to have your address, because else I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get there. So if I then have that address, that taste, then I can do some practices and then I'm knowing if I'm on the right path or not.
Well, you talk about this, right? This means that by knowing my destination, I create a straight path towards the destination. None of us know when our time to die will come, so better get straight to our destination of our true self. Because if we die, it is too late to practice. And at the moment of death, we will have our biggest test ever. This I loved. Can we die without anger and worry? Can we die being grateful for everything in our life? Can we die being true to our way and our being? Can we die in a compassionate way? And I would also argue, can we live that same way that we hope to die?
Well, absolutely. So if we know how to die that way, then we're truly living, right? Then we're
Mm,
truly living, because
mhm.
then. So my dad died 21 years ago, and he died with a lot of fear and worry, and he still had all this stuff, and I could see when he was dying, it was not easy. And then I worked also with a Taoist teacher for 12 years, and when she was dying, she gave me the biggest lesson. 2 days before she died, I saw her, and I go, man, this is the biggest lesson she's given me. I want to die like that. And we don't know. A friend of mine just told me that another friend of hers was 36 and just dropped dead, heart attack. Healthy sports person, had no issues, nothing. So we don't know, right? We think we live till we're 80 or 90 or 70, but
Mhm.
we definitely do not know. So I think this is also, I go very regular for a massage or acupuncture or a Reiki session. And some people say, oh, Frans, do you have muscle pain or other pain? No, I go as a preventative,
Mhm.
right? And nowadays we go for healing when we actually feel depressed, stressed, have knots in our muscles. And then we go to some healing, and then we feel
Right.
better. Then we stop doing anything. And it's actually a really wrong way of looking at it. We have to make sure that we eat healthy, that we exercise, that we go for massage, Reiki, acupuncture on a regular basis, so that we feel strong, that actually the less we do get sick.
Mhm. Yeah, I just did a, sound immersion, which was amazing, and someone said to me, "Why'd you go?" And I was like, "'Cause I wanted to experience what it feels like to do that and see if it felt like it could be useful." I like to try things out here before I recommend them to see if I think
Yeah,
they'll be
absolutely.
useful, and it was fascinating, and it felt profound, and I wanna expose people to different ways of thinking about healing, but this today for me opened up my eyes in so many ways, and I'm really grateful to have had this conversation 'cause I feel like it really clarified for me if I went to a Reiki practitioner, some of the questions I would wanna know and ask in
Yes,
terms of
absolutely.
what they've done to really prepare to do the
Yeah.
hands-on healing work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in a way, as we go there and we pay, we should ask. Like as I said, I like acupuncture, and I moved to this town 5 years ago. So I was looking around, and I found this first acupuncturist, and he was just sticking the needles in every time in exactly the same spot. It was almost like very, yeah, whatever. And
Mhm.
then and I go like, this is just basic acupuncture. It doesn't really do anything. And then we have the same with massage therapists. Some are just like, well, fluff, fluff, fluff.
Right.
But if you get a good, now I finally have found a good massage therapist. Man, I mean, she knows exactly the finer points. It really looks, each time it's different, because each time my body, mind, and energy is different. And, so there's definitely a very big quality in practitioners.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, Franz, thank you so much. This was so enlightening. Your new book is out, The Way of Reiki, and you have an amazing website. Tell us about that too, so people can find you and your teachings, and you do distance healing for those who don't live in Amsterdam, where you are.
Yeah, I teach also all around the world. So I teach in America, the UK, Australia, Japan, you name it, in
Wow.
Europe. So yeah, my website is www.ihreiki.com. So IH stands for International House. So ihreiki.com. There's lots of articles, lots of blogs, lots of videos, lots of teachings, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, check it out.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's nighttime where you are, right?
It is almost 8 p.m., but I don't
Okay.
mind. It's
Okay.
not too bad.
Well, thank you for spending your night with us. I'm very grateful, and the book in combination with this interview today will really help people fully understand, what is Reiki. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.